Welcome back to Sleeping with Facts, the quiet corner of the internet where history is allowed to slow down. Tonight we drift eastward, across an ocean of grass, to trace the outline of the largest connected land empire the world has ever known. There is no need to remember anything, no need to follow closely. Let your eyes rest, let your breathing settle, and let the steppe carry you somewhere far away. Somewhere north of the Gobi Desert, where the grass runs pale gold to the edge of the sky, there is a silence so complete that travelers say they can hear their own heartbeat. It is into this silence that our story tonight settles, not with noise or spectacle, but with the quiet, patient rhythm of hooves moving across open land, and the slow unfolding of an empire built not from stone walls, but from distance itself. Close your eyes if you like. You do not need them for this. Picture instead a horizon so wide that the curve of the earth becomes visible along its edge, a pale blue line where the grass finally gives way to sky. This is the Eurasian Steppe, a belt of grassland stretching roughly 5,000 miles from the shores of Manchuria in the east to the plains of Hungary in the west. It is one continuous corridor of open land, wider than any ocean, and for thousands of years it was crossed only slowly, by people who understood wind, water, and the changing color of grass in a way that most of us have long forgotten. It was here, in the 12th century, along the banks of a river called the Onnen, that a child was born into a small and unremarkable clan. He would not stay unremarkable for long. In time, the world would come to know him as Genghis Khan, though that name itself was something he earned rather than inherited, a title meaning something closer to universal or oceanic ruler, chosen by an assembly of his own people rather than granted by blood alone. Tonight we are not going to rush through his life the way an action film might, with drums and shouting and sudden cuts from battle to battle. Instead, we are going to walk slowly around the edges of this story, the way you might walk around a great museum after closing time, when the lights are low and there is no one left to hurry you along. We will look at the shape of the land he came from, the structure of the society he built, the quiet genius of the systems that allowed a nation of a few million herders to administer, for a time, nearly a quarter of the entire inhabited world. There is a strange comfort, I think, in thinking about scale this large just before sleep. The mind, when it is tired, likes to travel. It likes distance. It likes to imagine wide, open spaces where there is room to stretch out and disappear for a while. The Mongol Empire, at its greatest extent, stretched across roughly 9 million square miles, touching the Pacific Ocean on one side and the edges of Central Europe on the other. To cross it on horseback, moving steadily, would have taken the better part of a year. That is the kind of vastness that does not frighten the mind before sleep. It empties it. We will talk tonight about grass, and about the particular shade of green it turns in early summer along the Kurlan River. We will talk about felt, the dense woven wool that formed the walls of a Mongol tent, called a ger, soft gray-white in color, thick enough to keep out both wind and winter. We will talk about the postal relay system that could move a message nearly 200 miles in a single day, faster than almost anything else on Earth at the time, carried hand to hand, horse to horse, station to station, across a network of relay points spaced roughly 25 miles apart. We will talk about paper money, and about observatories built to track the slow turning of the stars, and about a capital city called Karakorum where craftsmen from Paris and monks from Tibet and merchants from Persia might all pass one another in the same market square. We will talk about silk, dyed the deep blue of lapis lazuli or the soft ochre of turmeric, moving west along roads that the empire itself made safer than they had ever been before. None of what follows tonight is meant to alarm you or to keep you alert. There will be no dramatic countdowns, no urgent music, no sudden reveals. Instead, think of this as a long, slow unspooling of thread, one fact laid gently after another, each one small enough to hold in your mind for just a moment before it drifts away and the next one arrives. You do not need to remember any of it. You only need to let it move through you, the way wind moves through tall grass, bending it slightly and then letting it rise again. So settle into your pillow now. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your jaw soften. Somewhere far away, on a plain lit gold by a sun that set nearly 800 years ago, a small group of riders is moving slowly toward the horizon, and we are simply going to watch them go, one gentle fact at a time, until sleep finds you first. The Eurasian Steppe, the vast grassland corridor from which the Mongol Empire eventually rose, stretches for roughly 5,000 miles, connecting the eastern edge of Manchuria to the plains of Hungary in the west. This continuous belt of grass, low hills, and shallow river valleys made it possible for people, animals, and ideas to move across enormous distances without ever needing to cross a mountain range or a sea. The steppe climate is famously continental, meaning it swings between short, warm summers and long, deeply cold winters, which shaped the migratory rhythms of everyone who lived there. Grasses across this region tend to be soft and silver-green in early spring, deepening to a warm gold by late summer as the seed heads dry in the wind. It is, in essence, one of the largest uninterrupted natural corridors on the surface of the planet. Genghis Khan was born along the banks of the Onon River, in what is now northeastern Mongolia, sometime in the early 1160s, though the precise year remains gently uncertain among historians. His birth name was Temüjin, a name some scholars believe was drawn from a defeated rival his father had recently captured, following a Mongol custom of naming children after notable events near the time of their birth. The Onon River itself is a slow, meandering waterway lined with birch and larch trees, its banks turning a soft rust color each autumn. Temüjin's early years were spent among the Borjigin clan, a modestly sized group of pastoral herders rather than any kind of ruling elite. The landscape of his childhood, gentle hills rolling toward distant mountains, would later become the geographic heart from which his empire slowly expanded outward. Mongolian herders of the 12th century relied on what are sometimes called the five snouts, referring to the 5 primary types of livestock kept across the steppe: horses, cattle, sheep, goats, and camels. Each animal served a distinct purpose within the household economy, with sheep and goats providing wool, milk, and meat, while horses offered both transportation and a source of fermented mare's milk called airag. Camels, hardier and slower moving, were reserved mainly for carrying heavy loads across drier stretches of land. This balance of species allowed a single family to remain largely self-sufficient while moving their herds across wide seasonal territories. The rhythm of the year was dictated almost entirely by where the grass was greenest and the water most reliable. The traditional Mongol dwelling, known as a ger in Mongolian and often called a yurt in English, is a round, portable structure built from a wooden lattice frame covered in thick layers of felted wool. The felt itself is pressed rather than woven, made by laying raw wool in even layers and working it with moisture and pressure until the fibers bind together into a dense, weatherproof fabric. A typical GER could be assembled or disassembled by a small family in under an hour, an efficiency that made it perfectly suited to a life built around constant, gentle movement. Inside, the space was organized with quiet precision, the north side reserved for honored guests, the hearth positioned at the very center beneath a circular opening in the roof. The pale, rounded silhouette of a GER against open grassland remains one of the most recognizable images associated with steppe life to this day. Mongolian horses, sometimes referred to today as the Taki or simply the native steppe horse, are notably smaller and stockier than many modern breeds, typically standing between 12 and 14 hands at the shoulder. What they lack in height, they make up for in remarkable endurance, capable of traveling long distances at a steady pace while surviving almost entirely on foraged grass, even through the colder months. Their coats shift seasonally, often thickening into a shaggy, insulating layer of brown, dun, or gray fur as winter approaches. A single Mongol rider in the 12th century typically kept several horses in rotation, allowing fresh mounts to be swapped in during long journeys. This relationship between rider and horse was less a matter of ownership and more a quiet, lifelong partnership shaped by necessity. Before Temüjin's rise, the steppe was home to a shifting patchwork of tribal confederations, including the Merkit, the Tatars, the Nayman, the Karait, and the Mongols themselves, each occupying different stretches of grassland and river valley. Alliances between these groups tended to be fluid, formed through marriage, shared grazing agreements, or temporary military cooperation rather than any fixed borders. Language across the region varied by dialect but shared common roots, allowing for a degree of mutual understanding even between rival groups. Trade between tribes moved slowly but steadily, exchanging felt, leather, dried meat, and small quantities of metal goods obtained from settled communities to the south. This patchwork arrangement would eventually be reshaped entirely under a single unifying structure. The traditional Mongol calendar followed a 12-year cycle, with each year associated with an animal, a system shared broadly across much of East and Central Asia. Seasonal migration was planned around this same rhythm of return, with families moving between winter camps sheltered in low valleys and summer pastures spread across higher, more open ground. The changing color of the grass served as a kind of natural calendar in itself, with the pale green shoots of early spring signaling it was time to move the herds toward fresh pasture. Rivers such as the Onan, the Kurlan, and the Tuol formed the geographic backbone of this seasonal movement, their gentle courses tracing the paths that families would follow generation after generation. This cyclical, patient relationship with land and season shaped much of the cultural rhythm later carried into the empire's administration. Dairy played an unusually central role in the traditional Mongol diet, with fermented mare's milk, known as irag or kumis, considered both a staple beverage and a mildly significant cultural tradition. The fermentation process, which could take several days, produced a lightly effervescent drink with a low alcohol content, traditionally stored and stirred in large leather or wooden vessels. Beyond irag, herders produced a wide variety of dried curds, soft cheeses, and clarified butter, many of which could be preserved for months and carried easily during long journeys. This dairy-based diet was supplemented by meat, particularly mutton, though vegetables and grains remained relatively rare given the practical challenges of farming across open grassland. The resulting cuisine was, in its own quiet way, perfectly adapted to a life spent almost entirely in motion. Shamanism formed the dominant spiritual framework across much of the pre-imperial steppe, centered around a reverence for Tangri, often translated as eternal blue sky, alongside a deep respect for the natural world, including mountains, rivers, and fire. Shamans, known as Bu for men and Udgen for women, served as intermediaries between the physical and spiritual worlds, performing rituals tied to healing, weather, and major life events. Sacred mountains, such as Burkhan Kaldon near the Onan River, were treated with particular reverence and are said to have held personal significance for Temüjin throughout his life. Fire itself was considered a purifying element, and small offerings were often made to hearths before meals or journeys. This spiritual worldview later coexisted, somewhat unusually for the era, alongside a broad tolerance for other religious traditions once the empire expanded. Long before any single ruler unified the steppe, the region already possessed a sophisticated oral tradition, preserving history, lore, and genealogy through memorized song, poetry, and storytelling rather than written text. This oral culture placed enormous value on memory and eloquence, with respected elders and storytellers serving as living archives of tribal history. Many of the details historians now rely on regarding Temüjin's early life come from a text called The Secret History of the Mongols, believed to have been composed shortly after his death by drawing on these older oral traditions. Written in a script adapted from the Uighur alphabet, it remains one of the earliest surviving literary works in the Mongolian language. Its pages move at an unhurried, almost lyrical pace, closer in rhythm to a long poem than a strict historical record. According to The Secret History of the Mongols, Temüjin's father, a minor clan leader named Yesigay, died while Temüjin was still a young boy, leaving the family without the protection of their wider clan network. Following custom, several nearby families reportedly withdrew their support, and Temüjin's mother, Holan, was left to raise her children largely on her own along the quiet banks of the Onan. Historians describe this period as one of considerable hardship, though the surviving accounts focus less on suffering itself and more on the resourcefulness required to gather roots, fish, and small game across the changing seasons. This early experience of instability is often cited as a formative influence on the emphasis Temüjin later placed on loyalty and structured alliance. The landscape of this period, marked by wide, empty stretches of grass and slow-moving rivers, remained geographically close to where his empire would eventually be proclaimed. Temüjin's rise depended heavily on a series of carefully built alliances, most notably with Torul, the powerful leader of the Karaite Confederation, who had once been sworn brothers, or Anda, with Temüjin's father. This bond of Anda, a formalized friendship considered as significant as blood kinship, provided Temüjin with early protection and legitimacy during a period when his own clan held little independent power. Alongside this alliance, Temüjin formed a similarly close Anda bond with Jamuka, a childhood friend and fellow clan leader, whose relationship with Temüjin would shift considerably over the following years. These layered alliances, built through shared oaths rather than formal treaties, illustrate how personal relationships functioned as a kind of political infrastructure across the steppe. Over time, Temüjin's network of loyal followers grew to include individuals from multiple different tribes, unified more by personal allegiance than shared ancestry. In the year 1206, at a great assembly known as a Kurultai, held near the source of the Onan River, Temüjin was formally declared ruler of a newly unified Mongol nation and given the title Genghis Khan. The Kurultai itself functioned as a kind of grand gathering of tribal leaders, where major decisions, including succession and law, were discussed and ratified collectively rather than imposed from above. The precise translation of the title Genghis remains debated among linguists, though many interpret it as relating to strength, universality, or the vastness of an ocean. This moment marked the formal transition from a patchwork of competing steppe tribes into a single unified political structure, organized under shared law and centralized military command. The location of this assembly, near the headwaters of the Onan, placed the birth of the empire almost precisely where Temüjin's own early life had unfolded decades earlier. One of Genghis Khan's earliest and most significant administrative decisions was the reorganization of Mongol society away from traditional tribal and clan lines, replacing them instead with a decimal military and social structure based on units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. This system, sometimes referred to as the Aban, Jaghun, Minghan, and Tumen structure, deliberately mixed members of different tribes together within the same units, weakening old clan loyalties in favor of loyalty to the unit and to Genghis Khan himself. Soldiers within these units were bound by strict codes of mutual responsibility, meaning the actions of one member could affect the standing of the entire group. This restructuring allowed for remarkably efficient mobilization, since orders could move cleanly through a clear chain of command rather than through a tangle of competing tribal leaders. The same decimal framework was later extended into civil administration as the empire grew. Genghis Khan introduced a legal code known as the Yasa, a set of laws and regulations intended to apply uniformly across the newly unified Mongol nation. Though the original text of the Yasa has not survived in complete form, surviving references suggest it covered matters ranging from military discipline and hunting regulations to trade practices and religious tolerance. Several sources describe provisions protecting envoys and merchants, reflecting the empire's early emphasis on maintaining stable trade routes even during periods of active military campaigning. The Yasa also reportedly established rules around the sharing of captured resources and the treatment of allied populations, intended to reduce internal conflict among Mongol forces. As an early attempt at codified law spanning multiple ethnic groups and territories, it represented a notable shift away from purely customary or tribal legal traditions. Meritocracy played an unusually prominent role in the early Mongol military structure, with promotion based largely on demonstrated skill, loyalty, and battlefield performance rather than inherited noble status. This approach allowed talented individuals from modest backgrounds to rise into positions of significant command, a departure from many contemporary societies where military leadership was more strictly tied to bloodline. Several of Genghis Khan's most trusted generals, including Subutai, came from relatively humble origins within the steppe's social structure. Subutai in particular would go on to plan and lead campaigns across thousands of miles, coordinating movements across widely separated fronts. This emphasis on capability over lineage contributed significantly to the operational effectiveness of the early Mongol armies. Genghis Khan's early campaigns unified not only the traditional Mongol clans but also neighboring steppe confederations, including the Tatars, the Nayman, and the Karaite, gradually consolidating what had previously been a fragmented political landscape into a single cohesive state. Each incorporation followed a broadly similar pattern, with defeated or surrendering groups absorbed into the new decimal military structure rather than simply subjugated as separate entities. This method of integration helped rapidly expand the manpower and resources available to the growing Mongol state. By the time of the 1206 Kurultai, the vast majority of the Eurasian Steppe's major tribal groups had been drawn under a single unified banner. The resulting nation, still numbering only a few million people, stood at the threshold of an expansion that would eventually reach far beyond the grasslands that had shaped it. Literacy and record-keeping developed relatively quickly within the early Mongol state, aided by the adoption of a writing system derived from the Yugur script, itself descended from an older Aramaic-based alphabet. This script was formally adopted around the early 1200s, allowing for the recording of laws, correspondence, and administrative decrees in written Mongolian for the first time. A captured Yugur scribe named Tatatunga is often credited with helping introduce this writing system into Mongol administrative practice. Written communication allowed orders to be transmitted with greater precision across long distances, complementing the empire's growing network of mounted messengers. This shift from a purely oral tradition to a partially literate administrative culture marked an important step in the empire's organizational development. The early Mongol state placed considerable emphasis on census-taking and organized taxation, a practice that expanded significantly as new territories were incorporated into the empire. Population counts allowed administrators to accurately calculate military conscription quotas, tribute obligations, and the distribution of resources across different regions. These censuses were often conducted with notable thoroughness, sometimes extending down to individual households, a level of administrative detail unusual for the period. Tax obligations varied depending on region and profession, with merchants, farmers, and herders each subject to different structures suited to their economic role. This systematic approach to administration helped the empire manage territories that were, in many cases, geographically and culturally distant from the Mongolian heartland. Genghis Khan's early military campaigns beyond the steppe began with a series of engagements against the Western Xia dynasty, located in what is now northwestern China, starting in the early 1200s. These campaigns tested and refined Mongol siege capabilities against fortified cities, a very different challenge compared to the open field engagements common on the steppe. Diplomatic and tributary relationships were eventually established with Western Xia, providing the growing Mongol state with access to new administrative expertise and trade connections. This period also marked increasing contact between the Mongols and the more densely populated agricultural societies to the south, setting the stage for the far larger campaigns that would follow. The methodical, patient approach seen in these early engagements would later become a defining characteristic of Mongol military strategy across much of Eurasia. The Mongol army was organized almost entirely around cavalry, divided broadly into light and heavy horsemen, each serving distinct tactical roles within a single engagement. Light cavalry, typically unarmored or lightly armored, specialized in mobility and ranged attacks using the recurve bow, allowing riders to harass enemy formations from a distance before withdrawing. Heavy cavalry, by contrast, wore lead armor, often lamellar in construction, and carried lances intended for close engagement once enemy lines had been sufficiently weakened. This combination allowed Mongol commanders to shape the rhythm of a battle with considerable flexibility, alternating between distance and direct contact as circumstances required. The coordination between these two cavalry types depended heavily on clear signaling and disciplined unit cohesion. The Mongol recurve bow, often referred to as a composite bow, was constructed from a combination of wood, horn, and sinew layered together and bonded with natural adhesives. This layered construction allowed the bow to store and release significantly more energy than a simple wooden bow of similar size, giving it considerable range and power despite its relatively compact frame. Construction of a single bow could take a considerable amount of time, sometimes over a year, allowing the natural materials to properly cure and bond. Riders trained with these bows from a young age, developing the ability to fire accurately while mounted and moving, a skill requiring years of steady practice. The compact size of the bow made it particularly well suited to use on horseback, where a longer weapon would have been impractical. Mongol soldiers typically maintained a string of several horses per rider, allowing fresh mounts to be swapped during long marches or extended campaigns, significantly increasing the overall speed and endurance of the army as a whole. This practice reduced the strain placed on any single animal, allowing forces to cover remarkable distances in relatively short periods of time. Horses were selected and bred specifically for stamina rather than raw speed, favoring animals capable of sustained movement across varied terrain. The reliance on hardy, grass-fed horses also meant the army required comparatively little in the way of imported grain or fodder, allowing for greater independence during long campaigns. This logistical efficiency stood in notable contrast to many contemporary armies, which often depended on slower, more resource-intensive supply trains. Mongol military communication relied heavily on a system of flags, signal fires, and horn calls, allowing commanders to coordinate movement across formations that might otherwise be too spread out for direct verbal command. Different colored flags could indicate specific maneuvers, such as advancing, regrouping, or feigned retreat, allowing large numbers of riders to shift direction with considerable coordination. This visual signaling system was particularly valuable during the wide, sweeping maneuvers characteristic of steppe warfare, where units often operated at considerable distances from one another. Signal fires, positioned at elevated points, extended this communication network even further, allowing information to travel ahead of or alongside moving forces. This combination of visual and auditory signaling reflected the broader Mongol emphasis on disciplined, coordinated movement across open terrain. Siege warfare represented a significant area of adaptation for the Mongol military, particularly as campaigns extended into regions with heavily fortified cities across Central Asia, Persia, and China. Rather than relying solely on their own expertise, Mongol commanders actively incorporated engineers and specialists from conquered populations, integrating Chinese, Persian, and Central Asian siege technology into their broader military toolkit. This included the use of trebuchets, capable of launching heavy projectiles over considerable distances, as well as techniques for redirecting rivers to affect fortified positions. This willingness to adopt and refine foreign technology, rather than relying purely on existing steppe traditions, allowed the Mongol military to remain remarkably adaptable across vastly different geographic and architectural contexts. Siege specialists were often organized into their own dedicated units, separate from the core cavalry forces. The Mongol military maintained a notably sophisticated intelligence gathering network, relying on merchants, envoys, and local informants to collect detailed information about the geography, political structure, and military capacity of regions being considered for campaign. This information was often gathered well in advance of any military movement, allowing commanders to plan routes, supply logistics, and diplomatic approaches with considerable precision. Merchants traveling existing trade routes, particularly across Central Asia, often served as valuable sources of this kind of intelligence, given their familiarity with distant markets and political conditions. This emphasis on preparation and information gathering reflected a broader strategic culture that valued patience and calculation alongside speed and mobility. Campaigns were frequently planned years in advance, incorporating detailed knowledge of terrain, climate, and available resources along the intended route. Mongol armor, particularly among heavier cavalry units, often took the form of lamella construction, built from small overlapping plates of leather or metal laced together with cord. This layered design allowed for a degree of flexibility uncommon in solid plate armor, letting riders maintain the range of motion needed for mounted combat while still receiving meaningful protection. Leather lamella was frequently treated or lacquered, giving it a smooth, slightly glossy surface in shades ranging from deep brown to black. Wealthier or higher-ranking soldiers sometimes supplemented this with silk undergarments, which, according to several historical accounts, could help reduce the severity of arrow wounds by allowing the fabric to wrap around the arrowhead upon penetration. This combination of practicality and adaptability characterized much of Mongol military equipment more broadly. Discipline within the Mongol military was reinforced through the decimal unit structure, in which soldiers were organized into consistent groups of 10, with collective responsibility extending across the unit as a whole. This meant that the failure or desertion of a single soldier could affect the standing of the entire group, encouraging strong internal cohesion and mutual accountability among unit members. Training began early in life, with young riders developing horsemanship and archery skills as a natural extension of daily herding activities on the steppe. Regular large-scale hunts, known as the nurge, served as both a practical food-gathering exercise and a valuable training opportunity, requiring coordinated movement across wide stretches of terrain to encircle game animals. These hunts closely mirrored the tactical maneuvers used in actual military campaigns, providing practical experience in coordinated, large-scale movement. Mongol tactical formations often made use of coordinated encirclement maneuvers, drawing directly from techniques refined during the large-scale communal hunts practiced across the steppe. Riders would spread out across a wide front before gradually curving inward, a movement designed to funnel opposing forces into a constrained space where organized resistance became increasingly difficult to maintain. Feigned retreats formed another notable element of Mongol tactics, in which riders would appear to withdraw in apparent disorder, drawing pursuing forces out of a defensible position before regrouping and countering. Execution of these maneuvers required extensive coordination and trust between units, reinforced by the same disciplined command structure used throughout the army. These tactics reflected a broader strategic preference for maneuver and positioning over direct, static confrontation. Logistics across Mongol campaigns benefited significantly from the army's relatively light dependence on traditional supply trains, given that soldiers often carried dried meat, curds, and other preserved dairy products capable of sustaining them for extended periods. Horses, grazing on available grassland along the route, reduced the need for large quantities of transported fodder, a significant advantage compared to many contemporary armies reliant on grain supply lines. This mobility allowed Mongol forces to sustain campaigns across vast distances, moving through regions where slower, more traditional armies might struggle to maintain adequate supply. Seasonal timing played an important role as well, with campaigns often planned around the availability of fresh grazing land for the army's substantial horse population. This careful attention to logistics, though less visually dramatic than battlefield tactics, formed one of the quiet structural foundations underlying the empire's expansion. At its greatest territorial extent, reached several decades after Genghis Khan's death, the Mongol Empire covered approximately 9 million square miles, making it the largest contiguous land empire in recorded history. This vast territory stretched from the Sea of Japan in the east to the edges of Central Europe in the west, and from Siberia in the north down toward the Persian Gulf and parts of Southeast Asia in the south. To put this scale into perspective, the empire's total area was roughly equivalent to the size of the African continent. Despite this enormous geographic spread, the empire maintained a surprising degree of administrative and logistical cohesion for a considerable period. The sheer scale of this territory meant that news, goods, and officials might travel for months simply to cross from one region of the empire to another. The Mongol conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire, located across much of modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, began around 1219 and represented one of the empire's most geographically significant early campaigns. This campaign brought Mongol forces into direct contact with the great cities of Central Asia, including Bukhara and Samarkand, both major centers of trade, scholarship, and craftsmanship along the Silk Road. The successful integration of this region connected the Mongol Empire directly to well-established trade networks stretching toward the Middle East and Mediterranean world. Samarkand in particular was known for its blue-tiled architecture and its position as a crossroads for merchants traveling between China, Persia, and beyond. This westward expansion marked a significant geographic turning point, extending Mongol influence far beyond the steppe and into the heart of Islamic Central Asia. Mongol campaigns eventually reached into Eastern Europe during the 1230s and early 1240s, under the command of Batu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, supported by the strategic planning of the general Subutai. These campaigns extended Mongol influence across the Rus principalities, through parts of Poland and Hungary, reaching as far west as the outskirts of Vienna before the westernmost advance was eventually halted and forces withdrew eastward. The speed of this advance across unfamiliar European terrain, including forested and mountainous regions quite different from the open steppe, demonstrated the adaptability of Mongol logistics and tactics. This campaign remains geographically notable as the furthest westward extent of direct Mongol military presence in Europe. The resulting territories in the west would eventually form the basis of what later became known as the Golden Horde. The conquest and eventual incorporation of northern and later southern China represented one of the longest and most geographically complex campaigns undertaken by the Mongol Empire, spanning several decades across the reigns of multiple Khans. Northern China, under the Jin dynasty, was gradually brought under Mongol control through much of the 1210s through 1230s, while the conquest of the southern Song dynasty extended into the late 13th century under Kublai Khan. This campaign required significant adaptation to the varied terrain of southern China, including rivers, mountains, and dense agricultural regions quite different from the open plains further north. The eventual unification of China under Mongol rule established the Yuan dynasty, with its capital positioned at what is now Beijing. This integration connected the Mongol Empire directly to one of the most populous and economically significant regions in the world at the time. The Mongol Empire's expansion into Persia and the broader Middle East established what would later become known as the Ilkhanate, centered around territories in modern-day Iran, Iraq, and parts of the Caucasus. This region became a significant center of Mongol administration, blending steppe governance traditions with existing Persian bureaucratic structures. Cities such as Tabriz grew into major centers of trade and scholarship under Ilkhanate rule, benefiting from their position along key trade routes connecting East Asia to the Mediterranean world. The geographic reach of this Khanate extended Mongol influence deep into a region with a long and sophisticated tradition of administration, agriculture, and urban development. Over time, the rulers of the Ilkhanate adopted many elements of Persian and Islamic culture, illustrating the broader pattern of regional adaptation seen across the empire. The empire's territory was eventually organized into 4 major khanates following a gradual process of division among Genghis Khan's descendants, including the Yuan dynasty in East Asia, the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe and parts of Central Asia, the Ilkhanate in the Middle East, and the Chagatai Khanate across Central Asia. Each Khanate developed its own distinct administrative character over time, shaped by the geography, existing populations, and cultural traditions of the regions it governed. Despite these divisions, the Khanates remained connected through shared ancestry, ongoing trade relationships, and a common Mongol legal and administrative heritage. This division reflected the practical challenges of governing such an enormous and geographically diverse territory from a single central point. Communication between khanates, though sometimes strained, continued through diplomatic channels and shared trade routes for generations. The geography of the Mongol Empire encompassed an extraordinary range of climates and landscapes, from the frozen taiga of Siberia in the north to the arid deserts of Central Asia and the humid, subtropical regions of southern China in the south. This diversity required considerable administrative flexibility, as governance strategies effective on the open steppe often needed significant adaptation when applied to densely forested, mountainous, or heavily agricultural regions. Rivers played a particularly important role in connecting these diverse regions, with waterways such as the Yellow River, the Amu Darya, and the Volga serving as key arteries for trade and administration. Mountain ranges, including the Tian Shan and the Caucasus, presented natural boundaries that nonetheless were crossed through carefully mapped passes and established routes. This geographic diversity is part of what makes the Mongol Empire such a remarkable case study in large-scale territorial administration. Mongol expansion into the Korean peninsula unfolded gradually through the 13th century, eventually establishing a tributary relationship between the Goryeo kingdom and the broader Mongol Empire. This relationship connected the Korean peninsula more directly into the wider network of trade and diplomatic exchange spanning the empire, while also serving as a staging point for later Mongol naval expeditions further east. Korean shipbuilding expertise was later incorporated into broader Mongol maritime efforts, reflecting the empire's willingness to draw on the specialized knowledge of incorporated regions. The relatively mountainous terrain of the Korean peninsula required particular logistical adaptation compared to the open steppe warfare more familiar to Mongol forces. This eastern extension of Mongol influence illustrates the empire's reach not only across continental landmasses but toward the edges of the Pacific coastline as well. The southern reach of Mongol influence extended into parts of Southeast Asia, including diplomatic and occasionally military engagement with regions of modern-day Vietnam, Myanmar, and Java, primarily during the later Yuan dynasty period under Kublai Khan. These campaigns and diplomatic missions brought Mongol administrators into contact with tropical climates and monsoon weather patterns quite distinct from the empire's steppe origins. Naval technology, adapted significantly from Chinese and Korean shipbuilding traditions, played an important role in these southern and eastern maritime efforts. The dense river networks and seasonal flooding characteristic of much of Southeast Asia required considerable logistical adjustment compared to overland steppe campaigns. This southern extension marked one of the furthest geographic reaches of direct Mongol engagement, bordering the edge of maritime Southeast Asia. Maps produced during the height of the Mongol Empire, particularly those created within the Ilkhanate and later Yuan administrative centers, reflect a remarkably sophisticated understanding of Eurasian geography for the period, incorporating knowledge gathered from Chinese, Persian, and Islamic cartographic traditions. This cross-cultural exchange of geographic knowledge was, in many ways, a direct product of the empire's vast territorial reach and its relatively open policies toward trade and travel across internal borders. Persian and Chinese astronomers and geographers working within Mongol administrative centers often collaborated directly, comparing measurements and correcting earlier maps based on newly available information. This geographic knowledge exchange contributed to a broader flow of scientific and technical understanding across the empire, connecting distant intellectual traditions in ways that would have been considerably more difficult under more fragmented political conditions. The resulting maps, though imperfect by modern standards, represented a significant advance in the shared geographic understanding of the Eurasian landmass. The period of relative stability and interconnected trade across the Mongol Empire, particularly during the 13th and early 14th centuries, is often referred to by historians as the Pax Mongolica or Mongol Peace. During this period, merchants, diplomats, and travelers could move across enormous stretches of Eurasia under a single, broadly unified system of law and protection, significantly reducing the risks traditionally associated with long-distance overland trade. This stability allowed the Silk Road trade networks to flourish with renewed intensity, connecting markets from the Mediterranean coast to the heart of China. Goods, ideas, and technologies moved along these routes with a fluidity that had rarely been possible under the more fragmented political conditions of earlier centuries. The Pax Mongolica remains one of the most studied examples of how large-scale political unification can influence long-distance trade and cultural exchange. Silk remained one of the most highly valued goods moving along Mongol-controlled trade routes, produced primarily in China and transported westward through Central Asia toward Persia, the Mediterranean, and eventually parts of Europe. Chinese silk of this period came in an enormous range of colors and weaves, from deep indigo blues achieved through natural dye processes to warm golden yellows associated with imperial households. Beyond finished textiles, raw silk thread was also traded extensively, allowing weavers in distant regions to incorporate it into their own local traditions and patterns. The relative safety of Mongol-controlled routes made it increasingly practical to transport such delicate and valuable goods across vast distances. This steady flow of silk contributed significantly to the broader economic prosperity experienced across many regions of the empire during the height of the Pax Mongolica. The Mongol Empire developed one of history's most efficient long-distance communication systems, known as the YAM, a network of relay stations spaced at regular intervals, often roughly 25 miles apart, along major routes throughout the empire. Riders carrying official messages could travel to the next station, exchange their tired horse for a fresh one, and continue onward almost without pausing, allowing information to travel remarkable distances in a single day. Under favorable conditions, messages could reportedly cover as much as 150 to 200 miles within a 24-hour period. Each relay station was typically stocked with food, water, and fresh horses, maintained through a coordinated system of local support and supply. This network represented a significant logistical achievement, connecting distant regions of the empire with a speed that would remain largely unmatched for centuries. Paper currency, first developed in China prior to Mongol rule, became increasingly standardized and widely circulated across parts of the empire, particularly under Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty administration. This currency, printed on paper made from mulberry bark, was backed by government reserves and represented a significant departure from the metal coinage more commonly used across much of the rest of Eurasia at the time. Marco Polo, among other travelers, described this paper money system with considerable interest, noting how it allowed for large-scale transactions without the physical burden of transporting heavy quantities of metal currency. The system required careful administrative oversight to prevent counterfeiting and to maintain public confidence in the paper note's value. This early experiment in standardized paper currency illustrates the administrative sophistication achieved within parts of the Mongol Empire's economic system. Trade along Mongol-controlled routes extended well beyond silk and precious metals, encompassing a remarkable variety of goods including spices, ceramics, glassware, furs, and increasingly, specialized craft goods produced within particular regions of the empire. Chinese porcelain, prized for its delicate white surface and intricate blue glazing, traveled westward in significant quantities, eventually influencing ceramic traditions as far away as Persia and the Middle East. In the opposite direction, goods such as Persian carpets, Central Asian horses, and various metalwork traditions moved eastward into China and beyond. This two-way flow of goods created new patterns of cultural exchange, with artistic styles and techniques gradually blending across previously more isolated regional traditions. The resulting cross-pollination of craft techniques represents one of the quieter but lasting legacies of this period of expanded trade. Religious tolerance across much of the Mongol Empire contributed significantly to the free movement of merchants and travelers representing a wide variety of faiths, including Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and various steppe shamanic traditions. This relatively open policy allowed religious communities to maintain places of worship and continue trade activities across regions under Mongol control, without facing the more restrictive conditions sometimes found under other contemporary rulers. Marco Polo's own travels, documented extensively in his later writings, were made possible in part by the relative safety and openness of these Mongol-controlled trade routes. Buddhist monks, Christian missionaries, and Islamic scholars are all recorded traveling considerable distances during this period, often under some degree of official protection. This atmosphere of relative openness helped facilitate not only the exchange of goods, but also ideas, religious texts, and philosophical traditions across an unusually wide geographic span. Caravanserais, large way stations designed to provide shelter, food, and security for traveling merchants, expanded significantly along key trade routes during the height of Mongol-controlled commerce. These structures, often built around a central courtyard with thick stone or mud brick walls, provided a safe place for merchants to rest, store goods, and care for pack animals during long journeys across otherwise exposed terrain. Many caravanserais were positioned at carefully calculated intervals, corresponding roughly to a single day's travel by camel or horse caravan. The relative safety provided by Mongol-administered law along these routes made the investment in maintaining such infrastructure increasingly worthwhile for local rulers and merchant guilds alike. The remains of many caravanserais from this period can still be found scattered across Central Asia, quiet stone markers of a once bustling network of trade. The exchange of agricultural knowledge and crops represented an important, if less frequently discussed, dimension of trade during the Pax Mongolica, with certain crop varieties, farming techniques, and irrigation methods moving between regions previously separated by considerable distance and political fragmentation. Middle Eastern and Central Asian agricultural expertise, including certain irrigation techniques suited to arid climates, found new application in parts of China and Mongolia under Yuan administration. Similarly, Chinese agricultural manuals and techniques were translated and studied within Persian and Central Asian administrative centers. This exchange of practical agricultural knowledge quietly influenced food production across large portions of the empire, contributing to broader economic stability. Such agricultural exchanges, though less visually dramatic than the movement of silk or spice, represent a meaningful example of the empire's role in connecting distant knowledge traditions. The relative stability of the Pax Mongolica also facilitated increased movement of skilled artisans and craftsmen between regions, with many relocated, sometimes voluntarily and sometimes as a matter of administrative policy, to serve in new imperial centers. Persian architects and craftsmen, for example, contributed significantly to construction projects within Mongol-administered territories in China, while Chinese artisans brought specialized techniques in metalwork and ceramics westward into Persia and beyond. This movement of specialized skill helped spread architectural and artistic techniques across an unusually wide geographic range, contributing to a gradual blending of regional styles. Workshops established under Mongol patronage often brought together craftsmen from multiple distant traditions, working side by side on shared projects. This cross-cultural collaboration in craft and construction represents one of the more tangible legacies of the empire's broader policies toward trade and mobility. Currency exchange and standardized weights and measures gradually developed across portions of the Mongol-controlled trade network, easing the practical challenges merchants faced when moving goods across regions with previously incompatible systems. Officials within Mongol-administered territories worked to establish more consistent standards for measuring goods such as silk, grain, and precious metals, reducing disputes and increasing efficiency in large-scale trade transactions. This standardization effort, though implemented unevenly across different regions and time periods, reflected a broader administrative interest in supporting the practical mechanics of long-distance commerce. Merchant guilds operating across multiple regions of the empire benefited considerably from this increased consistency, allowing for more predictable and efficient trade planning. This quiet infrastructure of standardization, much like the YAM relay system, formed an essential but often overlooked foundation supporting the broader prosperity associated with the Pax Mongolica. Religious tolerance was formally embedded within Mongol governance from a relatively early period, with the Yasa reportedly including provisions protecting religious leaders and institutions across the diverse faiths practiced within the empire's expanding territory. Buddhist monasteries, Christian churches, Islamic mosques, and Daoist temples were generally permitted to continue operating under Mongol rule, provided local communities remained loyal and continued paying required taxes. This policy of tolerance was, in many respects, a practical administrative choice as much as a philosophical one, allowing the empire to more smoothly incorporate populations with deeply established religious traditions. Religious leaders were often exempted from certain taxes and labor obligations, reflecting their perceived social importance within local communities. This relatively open religious policy stood out as somewhat distinctive compared to many other large empires of the period. Women held a notably active role within Mongol society, particularly compared to many contemporary settled civilizations, with several women serving as regents, advisors, and occasionally direct rulers during periods of transition or absence among male leaders. Genghis Khan's own mother, Holan, and later his senior wife, Bort, are both described in historical sources as influential figures within the early Mongol political structure. Mongol women traditionally managed the household economy, including livestock and the assembly and disassembly of the GER, while also frequently riding and managing horses independently. Several Mongol princesses were sent to marry into allied or incorporated ruling families, serving important diplomatic functions in cementing political alliances across the empire. This relatively active social and political role for women reflects broader patterns common across many pastoral steppe societies. Mongol clothing traditionally centered around the deel, a long, wrap-style robe secured with a sash, designed to provide warmth and flexibility suited to both horseback riding and the steppe's shifting seasonal temperatures. Deals were typically made from wool, silk, or cotton depending on social status and available resources, with wealthier individuals often favoring silk imported through established trade networks. Coloring varied considerably, from deep indigo blues to warm earth-toned browns, often accented with decorative trim along the collar and cuffs. Footwear typically consisted of sturdy leather boots with slightly upturned toes, designed for practical use both on foot and while riding. This distinctive style of dress remained remarkably consistent across the different regions and time periods of the empire's history. Mongol social structure placed considerable value on hospitality, with strict customs governing the treatment of guests, even those from distant or unfamiliar backgrounds, reflecting the practical necessities of life across the vast and sometimes sparsely populated steppe. Travelers arriving at a GER were traditionally offered food, shelter, and rest without immediate expectation of payment, a custom rooted in the understanding that any traveler might one day depend on similar generosity themselves. This tradition of hospitality extended into broader diplomatic practice, with foreign envoys and merchants generally afforded protection and courteous treatment while traveling through Mongol-controlled territory. Violating these customs of hospitality was considered a serious social transgression within traditional Mongol culture. This deeply ingrained emphasis on hospitality likely contributed, in part, to the relative safety experienced by merchants traveling the empire's trade routes. Music and oral storytelling remained deeply woven into daily Mongol life, with instruments such as the morin kur, a two-stringed fiddle carved with a horse head at the top of its neck, playing a particularly significant cultural role. The Morin-Kurs sound is often described as low, resonant, and slightly mournful, closely associated with the rhythms of herding life and long journeys across open grassland. Throat singing, known as kumi, represented another distinctive vocal tradition, in which a single singer produces multiple simultaneous pitches through careful control of throat and mouth positioning. These musical traditions were often performed during gatherings, celebrations, and quiet evenings within the GER, accompanying storytelling and shared meals. Music, much like oral history, served as an important vessel for preserving cultural memory across generations who relied primarily on spoken rather than written tradition. Marriage customs within Mongol society often involved carefully negotiated arrangements between families, with bride price and dowry practices varying depending on regional custom and the relative status of the families involved. Genghis Khan's own marriage to Bort, arranged during his childhood, followed established steppe tradition and later became one of the most historically significant unions within early Mongol political history. Polygyny was practiced among wealthier or higher status individuals, though the senior wife typically retained a distinct and often influential position within the household. Marriage alliances frequently served important political functions, cementing relationships between different clans or, later, between the ruling Mongol family and incorporated regional elites. These marriage customs, much like broader Mongol social structure, balanced personal relationship with practical political consideration. The administration of law across the diverse regions of the Mongol Empire often involved a careful blending of existing local legal traditions with the broader framework established under the Yasa, allowing for a degree of regional flexibility within an overarching imperial structure. In Persia, for example, elements of existing Islamic legal tradition continued to operate alongside Mongol administrative law, while in China, aspects of earlier Chinese legal and bureaucratic practice were retained and adapted under Yuan administration. This layered legal approach allowed the empire to govern an extraordinarily diverse population without necessarily requiring uniform legal practice across every region. Local judges and administrators often received training or guidance intended to align regional practice with broader imperial expectations, particularly regarding taxation, military conscription, and major criminal matters. This flexible approach to legal administration reflects the broader pragmatic governing style characteristic of much of Mongol imperial rule. Craft specialization expanded considerably within Mongol-controlled territories, with skilled artisans, including weavers, metalworkers, and ceramicists, often organized into dedicated workshops supported directly by imperial patronage. These workshops sometimes brought together craftsmen from multiple distant regions, encouraged by administrators eager to combine different technical traditions and artistic styles. Textile production in particular flourished under this system, with certain workshops specializing in luxurious silk brocades incorporating gold thread, a technique known as nasij, highly valued across both Mongol and neighboring courts. This blending of craft traditions produced distinctive artistic styles that reflected the empire's broader cultural diversity, combining motifs and techniques from Chinese, Persian, and Central Asian artistic traditions. Many surviving textile fragments from this period offer valuable insight into the sophisticated craftsmanship supported under Mongol imperial patronage. Education and the transmission of administrative knowledge became increasingly formalized within parts of the Mongol Empire, particularly as the need grew for literate officials capable of managing complex bureaucratic systems across diverse territories. Schools and training centers, often established with Chinese, Persian, or Central Asian administrative models in mind, prepared officials in record-keeping, taxation, and legal administration. Multilingual competency was frequently valued among administrators, given the practical necessity of managing correspondence and record-keeping across regions with vastly different languages and writing systems. Some officials were specifically trained to serve as translators and intermediaries between Mongol administrators and local populations, playing an important role in smoothing the practical challenges of governing such a linguistically diverse empire. This growing emphasis on administrative education reflected the empire's gradual evolution from a purely military structure into a more complex, multifaceted governing system. Social mobility, while not unlimited, remained notably more fluid within early Mongol society compared to many contemporary settled civilizations, with individuals capable of rising through military or administrative service regardless of their original clan or social standing. This relative openness extended, to a degree, into incorporated territories as well, where skilled or capable individuals from conquered populations might find opportunities for advancement within the broader imperial administrative structure. Officials of Chinese, Persian, Uyghur, and Central Asian background all served in various administrative capacities across different regions and periods of the empire, reflecting this broader openness to talent regardless of origin. This relatively flexible approach to social advancement contributed to the empire's ability to draw on a wide pool of administrative and technical expertise from across its vast and diverse territory. Such flexibility, though not without its limits and exceptions, represents a notable feature of the broader social structure underlying Mongol imperial governance. Genghis Khan had 4 sons with his senior wife Bort, named Jochi, Chagatai, Ojide, and Talui, each of whom would go on to play a significant role in the later structure and administration of the empire. Following steppe tradition, the empire's territory and resources were eventually divided among these sons and their descendants, forming the geographic basis for what would later become the empire's major khanates. Jochi's descendants would eventually establish the Golden Horde across Eastern Europe and parts of Central Asia, while Chagatai's line administered territory across much of Central Asia. Ojide was ultimately selected to succeed his father as Great Khan, while Talui's descendants, including Kublai Khan, would later come to control both the Yuan dynasty in China and the Ilkhanate in Persia. This division among 4 brothers established a family-based framework of governance that would shape the empire's political structure for generations. Ojide Khan, the 3rd son of Genghis Khan, was formally selected as Great Khan following a Kurultai held after his father's death, ruling from 1229 until his own death in 1241. Under Ojide's leadership, the empire continued its territorial expansion, including significant campaigns into Eastern Europe, while also seeing considerable administrative development within existing Mongol territory. Ojide is particularly credited with establishing Karakoram as a formal imperial capital, overseeing the construction of palaces, administrative buildings, and religious structures representing multiple faiths. His reign also saw further refinement of the empire's taxation and census systems, building on the administrative foundations established under his father. Ojide's leadership marked an important transitional period, shifting the empire's focus somewhat from pure military expansion toward more structured governance and administration. Kublai Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan through his son Temüjin, would go on to become one of the most historically significant Mongol rulers, formally establishing the Yuan dynasty and ruling over a unified China beginning in 1271. Kublai relocated the empire's eastern administrative center to Khanbaliq, a newly constructed capital located at the site of modern-day Beijing, reflecting the growing importance of Chinese territory within the broader Mongol imperial structure. His reign incorporated many elements of traditional Chinese governance alongside Mongol administrative practices, creating a distinctive hybrid system of rule. Kublai is also closely associated with the travels of Marco Polo, who reportedly spent considerable time within Kublai's court and later documented his observations extensively. Under Kublai's leadership, the Yuan dynasty became a significant center of trade, scholarship, and cultural exchange within the broader Mongol world. The gradual division of the Mongol Empire into distinct khanates reflected both the practical challenges of administering such an enormous territory and the natural dynamics of succession among multiple branches of Genghis Khan's extended family. While each khanate maintained a degree of independence in day-to-day governance, they continued to share a common administrative heritage, including elements of the Yasa legal code and the broader decimal military structure established under Genghis Khan. Diplomatic relationships between khanates, though occasionally strained by competing interests, generally continued through regular embassies and correspondence. Trade also continued to flow between khanates, supported by the broader infrastructure of the Pax Mongolica, including relay stations and established caravan routes. This balance between regional autonomy and shared imperial heritage characterized much of the empire's later political structure. Karakorum, established as an early imperial capital under Ogedei Khan, served as an important administrative and cultural center during the height of the United Mongol Empire, drawing visitors, merchants, and diplomats from across Eurasia. Accounts from travelers of the period, including the Franciscan friar William of Rubruck, describe a city notable for its religious diversity, hosting Buddhist temples, Christian churches, and Islamic mosques within relatively close proximity to one another. The city's most famous structure, according to several historical accounts, was an elaborate silver tree crafted by a captured French artisan, designed to dispense different beverages through separate spouts for use during court gatherings. Karakorum's population, while relatively modest compared to some of the great cities of China or Persia, reflected a remarkably international character given its location deep within the Mongolian steppe. The city's importance gradually diminished following Kublai Khan's relocation of the primary administrative center to Khanbaliq. Succession within the Mongol Empire generally followed a system that combined hereditary principle with formal ratification through the Kurultai Assembly, requiring gathered tribal and family leaders to formally confirm a new Great Khan's authority. This system, while providing a degree of flexibility compared to strict primogeniture, occasionally led to extended periods of negotiation or, in some cases, competing claims among different branches of the ruling family. The requirement for formal assembly and confirmation reflected the broader steppe tradition of collective decision-making among tribal leaders, even as the empire grew into a far larger and more centralized state. Regents, often close family members, sometimes governed during the sometimes lengthy periods between a ruler's death and the formal confirmation of a successor. This blend of hereditary and consultative succession practices represented a distinctive feature of Mongol imperial governance. Mongol Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan through Temüjin, ruled as Great Khan from 1251 until 1259, overseeing a period of renewed administrative reform and continued territorial consolidation across the empire. Under his leadership, further census efforts were undertaken across various regions, refining the empire's understanding of population and available resources for taxation and conscription purposes. Mongol also oversaw campaigns extending Mongol influence further into the Middle East, including into territories that would eventually form the core of the Ilkhanate. His reign reflected a continued emphasis on administrative sophistication, building on the foundations established by his predecessors while further integrating the empire's diverse territories under a shared system of governance. Mongol's death in 1259 set into motion a succession process that would eventually contribute to the empire's gradual division into more independently governed khanates. The Golden Horde, established primarily through the line of Jochi, Genghis Khan's eldest son, governed extensive territories across Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and parts of Central Asia for several centuries following the initial period of unified Mongol rule. This Khanate developed its own distinctive administrative character, blending Mongol governance traditions with the practical realities of ruling over largely settled agricultural populations across Russia and Eastern Europe. Trade routes connecting the Golden Horde's territory to both the Mediterranean world and the broader Mongol trading network contributed to considerable economic activity within the region. Cities such as Sarai, established as an administrative center along the Volga River, grew into significant hubs of trade and governance. The Golden Horde's influence on the political development of the broader Eastern European region extended for generations following the initial period of Mongol conquest. The Chagatai Khanate, governing much of Central Asia under the descendants of Genghis Khan's second son Chagatai, maintained a particularly close connection to traditional steppe customs and administrative practices compared to some of the empire's other regional divisions. This Khanate occupied a geographically significant position along key Silk Road trade routes, connecting territories further east and west and benefiting considerably from the continued flow of trade during the Pax Mongolica. Over time, rulers within the Chagatai Khanate increasingly adopted elements of the region's existing Turkic and Islamic cultural traditions, gradually blending these influences with earlier Mongol administrative practices. The Khanate's territory encompassed a wide range of landscapes, from fertile river valleys to more arid steppe and desert regions, requiring a correspondingly flexible approach to governance. This blending of steppe tradition with the established cultural practices of Central Asia characterized much of the Chagatai Khanate's distinctive historical development. By the early 14th century, the once unified Mongol Empire had, through a gradual and largely administrative process rather than sudden collapse, settled into a structure of 4 distinct khanates, each governing considerable territory with a significant degree of independence. Despite this division, cultural, administrative, and trade connections established during the earlier period of unified rule continued to influence relationships between these regions for generations. Many of the administrative practices established during the height of unified Mongol governance, including elements of the census system, relay communication networks, and legal frameworks, continued to shape regional governance well beyond the period of direct centralized control. This gradual transition from unified empire to a network of related but independently governed khanates reflects the practical challenges inherent in administering such an enormous and geographically diverse territory over an extended period of time. The legacy of this administrative structure would continue to influence the political geography of Eurasia for centuries to follow. Khanbaliq, established by Kublai Khan as the primary capital of the Yuan dynasty at the site of present-day Beijing, was constructed according to a carefully planned grid layout, reflecting both traditional Chinese urban planning principles and the administrative needs of a vast, multicultural empire. The city's design incorporated wide, straight avenues intersecting at regular intervals, with the imperial palace complex positioned at the symbolic and geographic center of the urban layout. Marco Polo's descriptions of the city emphasize its considerable size and organization, noting the careful planning evident in its street layout and the scale of its walls and gates. Khanbaliq quickly grew into one of the most significant urban centers in the world at the time, drawing merchants, scholars, and diplomats from across the empire and beyond. Much of the layout established during this period would go on to influence the later development of Beijing under subsequent dynasties. Samarkand, incorporated into the Mongol Empire following the conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire, had long been recognized as a significant center of trade, scholarship, and craftsmanship along the Silk Road prior to Mongol rule. The city was particularly renowned for its distinctive blue-tiled architecture, achieved through a glazing technique that produced a rich, deep turquoise color still associated with Central Asian architectural tradition today. Following its incorporation into the empire, Samarkand continued to serve as an important center of trade, benefiting from the broader stability and connectivity of the Pax Mongolica. The city's markets were known for offering an unusually wide variety of goods, reflecting its position at the crossroads of trade routes connecting China, Persia, and the broader Mediterranean world. Samarkand's architectural and cultural significance continued to grow in the centuries following the initial period of Mongol rule. Bukhara, another significant city incorporated into the empire following the Central Asian campaigns of the early 13th century, had long served as an important center of Islamic scholarship, trade, and craftsmanship prior to Mongol rule. The city's architecture reflected centuries of accumulated tradition, including elaborately decorated mosques and madrasas featuring intricate geometric tile work in shades of blue, turquoise, and white. Following its incorporation into the Mongol Empire, Bukhara gradually returned to its role as an active center of trade and scholarship, benefiting from the broader connectivity established under Mongol administration. Persian and Central Asian scholars continued to study and teach within the city's institutions, contributing to the broader intellectual exchange facilitated by the stability of the Pax Mongolica. Bukhara's long architectural and scholarly tradition continued to develop through subsequent centuries following the period of Mongol rule. Tabriz, serving as a significant administrative center within the Ilkhanate, grew considerably in both size and economic importance during the height of Mongol rule in Persia, benefiting from its strategic position along key trade routes connecting East Asia to the Mediterranean world. The city's markets and workshops produced a wide variety of goods, including finely woven textiles and metalwork, reflecting the broader craft traditions of the Persian cultural sphere. Architectural projects undertaken during this period incorporated elements of Persian, Chinese, and Central Asian design, reflecting the broader cultural blending characteristic of the Ilkhanate more generally. Tabriz also developed into a significant center of scholarship, hosting scholars working across multiple fields including astronomy, medicine, and history. This combination of trade, craft, and intellectual activity reflected the broader administrative sophistication achieved within the Ilkhanate during this period. Sarai, established as the primary administrative center of the Golden Horde along the Volga River, grew into a significant urban center over the course of the 13th and 14th centuries, reflecting the Khanate's role in administering extensive territories across Eastern Europe and parts of Central Asia. The city's position along the Volga provided important access to river-based trade routes, connecting the region to both the Caspian Sea and broader networks extending toward the Mediterranean world. Sarai's population reflected considerable cultural diversity, incorporating Mongol administrators alongside Turkic, Slavic, and other regional populations drawn to the city's economic opportunities. Architectural remains and archaeological evidence from the site suggest a city of considerable scale and organization, reflecting the administrative sophistication achieved within the Golden Horde. The city's importance gradually declined in subsequent centuries, though its role during the height of Golden Horde administration remains historically significant. Mongol architectural influence extended beyond purely administrative structures, contributing to notable developments in religious architecture across various regions of the empire, particularly given the broader policy of religious tolerance maintained under Mongol rule. Buddhist temples constructed within Yuan dynasty territory often incorporated elements of both Chinese and Tibetan architectural tradition, reflecting the diverse religious influences present within the imperial court. Similarly, Islamic architectural traditions continued to develop and flourish within regions such as Persia and Central Asia under Mongol administration, producing some of the most celebrated examples of Islamic architecture from this broader historical period. This pattern of architectural development, shaped by relative religious tolerance and considerable resources available through imperial patronage, contributed to a notable flourishing of religious construction across multiple regions and traditions during the height of Mongol rule. The GER, while primarily associated with the mobile lifestyle of the Mongolian steppe, also influenced certain elements of formal court architecture, with large ceremonial versions of the traditional felt tent used during major imperial gatherings and celebrations even within more permanent capital cities. These ceremonial jars were often considerably larger than traditional herding structures, sometimes capable of housing significant numbers of guests during formal court occasions. Decorative elements, including elaborate textile hangings and carved wooden supports, distinguished these ceremonial structures from the more practical jars used in daily steppe life. This blending of traditional mobile architecture with the more permanent structures of imperial capitals reflects the broader cultural continuity maintained even as Mongol rulers increasingly governed from fixed administrative centers. The presence of these ceremonial jars within capitals such as Karakorum served as a visible, tangible connection to the empire's steppe origins. Bridge and road construction expanded considerably across portions of the Mongol Empire, particularly in support of the broader Yam relay communication system and the increased trade activity associated with the Pax Mongolica. Existing Chinese and Persian engineering traditions were often incorporated into these infrastructure projects, reflecting the broader pattern of technical knowledge exchange characteristic of the period. Stone and wooden bridges, constructed to withstand seasonal flooding and heavy caravan traffic, connected key trade routes across rivers and other natural barriers. Road maintenance, an essential but often overlooked aspect of infrastructure development, was typically organized at the local level, supported by broader imperial administrative oversight. This investment in physical infrastructure, though less visually dramatic than the construction of palaces or temples, formed an essential foundation supporting the broader economic and communication networks of the empire. Observatories constructed during the height of Mongol rule, particularly within the Ilkhanate and later Yuan administrative centers, reflected considerable investment in astronomical study and the broader scientific exchange facilitated by the empire's vast reach. The Maraga Observatory, established in Persia under Ilkhanate patronage, brought together astronomers from Persian, Chinese, and Islamic scientific traditions, contributing to significant advances in astronomical measurement and calculation. Instruments developed at Maraga, including large-scale devices for measuring the position of celestial bodies, reflected considerable technical sophistication for the period. Similarly, astronomical observatories established within Yuan China incorporated both existing Chinese astronomical tradition and newly introduced techniques from Persian and Islamic scholarship. This cross-cultural collaboration in astronomical study represents one of the more notable intellectual achievements associated with the broader scientific exchange of the Mongol era. Palace complexes constructed within major Mongol administrative centers, including Kambalik and Karakoram, reflected a deliberate blending of architectural traditions drawn from across the empire's vast territory, incorporating elements of Chinese, Persian, and Central Asian design within a single unified structure. These palace complexes typically included multiple courtyards, formal audience halls, and extensive gardens, designed to accommodate both the practical needs of imperial administration and the ceremonial requirements of court life. Decorative elements often included finely carved woodwork, glazed tile work, and elaborate textile hangings, reflecting the considerable craft resources available through imperial patronage. The scale and sophistication of these palace complexes reflected the broader administrative and economic resources commanded by the Mongol imperial court at the height of its power. Though few of these structures survive intact today, archaeological and historical records offer considerable insight into their original scale and design. The Mongol Empire facilitated one of history's most significant periods of scientific and technical knowledge exchange, connecting scholarly traditions from China, Persia, Central Asia, and the broader Islamic world within a single, relatively open administrative framework. Astronomers, physicians, and mathematicians from these different traditions increasingly had the opportunity to study alongside one another, comparing methods and correcting earlier errors through shared observation and calculation. This exchange was actively encouraged by several Mongol rulers, who recognized the practical value of accurate astronomical calculation for calendar keeping, agricultural planning, and administrative record keeping. The resulting blend of scientific traditions produced advances that would likely have taken considerably longer to develop under more isolated conditions. This period of cross-cultural scientific exchange represents one of the more significant intellectual legacies of Mongol imperial administration. Medical knowledge exchange flourished considerably during the height of Mongol rule, with Chinese, Persian, and Islamic medical traditions increasingly influencing one another through direct scholarly contact facilitated by the empire's broad connectivity. Persian medical texts, including detailed pharmacological knowledge, were translated and studied within Chinese administrative centers, while Chinese medical practices, including certain herbal treatments and diagnostic techniques, found new application within Persian and Central Asian medical practice. Hospitals and medical schools established within major Mongol administrative centers sometimes brought together physicians trained in these different traditions, working alongside one another to treat patients and train new practitioners. This exchange of medical knowledge, though less frequently highlighted than other aspects of Mongol administration, represents a meaningful example of the empire's broader role in connecting distant intellectual traditions. Printing technology, developed earlier in China, saw expanded use and refinement during the period of Mongol rule, supporting the production of administrative documents, religious texts, and eventually paper currency across various regions of the empire. Woodblock printing remained the dominant technique during this period, allowing for the relatively efficient reproduction of text and images across multiple copies. This technology proved particularly valuable for administrative purposes, allowing standardized documents, including tax records and official decrees, to be reproduced with considerable consistency across the empire's vast territory. Buddhist and Daoist religious texts were also reproduced extensively using these printing techniques, contributing to the broader spread of religious literature during this period. This continued development and application of printing technology reflects the practical, administratively minded approach characteristic of much of Mongol imperial governance. Mathematical knowledge exchange during the Mongol period brought together Chinese, Persian, and Islamic mathematical traditions, contributing to advances in areas including algebra, geometry, and astronomical calculation. Persian and Islamic mathematical texts, building on earlier Greek and Indian mathematical traditions, were studied and translated within Chinese administrative and scholarly centers, while Chinese mathematical techniques found application within Persian scholarly circles. This exchange particularly benefited astronomical calculation, where precise mathematical methods were essential for accurately predicting celestial movements and maintaining accurate calendars. Scholars working within institutions such as the Moraga Observatory drew on this blended mathematical tradition to refine astronomical measurement and calculation techniques. This period of mathematical exchange represents another example of the broader intellectual cross-pollination facilitated by the relative openness of Mongol imperial administration. Agricultural science and technique benefited from considerable knowledge exchange during the Mongol period, with irrigation techniques, crop rotation methods, and agricultural tools moving between regions previously separated by considerable political and geographic distance. Central Asian and Persian irrigation techniques, particularly those suited to more arid climates, found new application within certain regions of Mongol-administered China, contributing to expanded agricultural productivity in previously marginal farming areas. Agricultural manuals produced during this period often incorporated knowledge drawn from multiple regional traditions, reflecting the broader pattern of practical knowledge exchange characteristic of Mongol administration. This exchange of agricultural knowledge contributed to broader economic stability across various regions of the empire, supporting population growth and continued urban development. Though less visually dramatic than other aspects of Mongol history, this agricultural knowledge exchange represents a meaningful and lasting contribution to regional food production practices. Metallurgical knowledge and technique also benefited from the broader exchange facilitated by Mongol administration, with techniques for working iron, bronze, and precious metals moving between regions with previously distinct metalworking traditions. Persian and Central Asian metalworking techniques, including certain decorative inlay methods, found new application within Chinese craft. Workshops, while Chinese techniques, including certain casting methods, influenced metalworking practice further west. This exchange contributed to the production of increasingly sophisticated metal goods, including decorative items, tools, and weaponry, reflecting the blended craft traditions characteristic of the broader Mongol cultural exchange. Workshops supported through imperial patronage often specifically brought together craftsmen trained in different regional metalworking traditions, encouraging direct technical exchange and collaboration. This blending of metallurgical knowledge represents another example of the practical, craft-based knowledge exchange facilitated by the empire's broad connectivity. Calendar systems and time-keeping methods saw considerable refinement during the Mongol period, drawing on the combined astronomical knowledge of Chinese, Persian, and Islamic scholarly traditions to produce increasingly accurate calculations of the solar year and lunar cycles. This refined calendar knowledge held considerable practical importance for administrative purposes, including the accurate timing of tax collection, agricultural planning, and religious observance across the empire's diverse population. Astronomers working within Ilkhanate and Yuan administrative centers collaborated to compare and refine existing calendar systems, drawing on newly available observational data gathered from observatories such as Moraga. This collaborative approach to calendar refinement reflects the broader pattern of practical, administratively motivated scientific exchange characteristic of Mongol imperial governance. The resulting calendar systems, while eventually superseded by later developments, represented a meaningful advance in astronomical accuracy for the period. Geographic and cartographic knowledge expanded considerably during the Mongol period, supported by the empire's extensive administrative need for accurate information regarding distances, terrain, and available resources across its vast territory. Chinese, Persian, and Islamic cartographic traditions increasingly influenced one another, producing maps that incorporated a broader range of geographic knowledge than had typically been available under more fragmented earlier political conditions. Administrators and scholars working within Mongol-controlled territories often compiled detailed geographic surveys, recording information regarding trade routes, agricultural resources, and population distribution across incorporated regions. This expanded geographic knowledge supported not only military and administrative planning, but also the broader development of trade networks connecting distant regions of the empire. The resulting cartographic advances represent a meaningful contribution to the broader historical development of geographic knowledge across Eurasia. Paper-making technology, developed earlier in China, continued to spread and refine during the period of Mongol rule, supporting the broader expansion of administrative record-keeping, printed texts, and paper currency across various regions of the empire. Paper production techniques moved westward along established trade routes, gradually influencing paper production practices within Persia and, eventually, parts of the Islamic world and beyond. This spread of paper-making technology held considerable practical significance, supporting the broader administrative and scholarly activities characteristic of Mongol imperial governance. Paper of varying quality and thickness was produced for different purposes, from durable administrative records to finer paper suited to calligraphy and artistic work. This continued spread of paper-making technology represents another example of the practical technical knowledge exchange facilitated by the empire's extensive trade and administrative networks. The broader pattern of scientific and technical exchange facilitated by Mongol imperial administration reflects a deliberate, practically motivated approach to knowledge, valued primarily for its usefulness in supporting effective governance, military logistics, and economic prosperity across the empire's vast territory. Rather than favoring any single scholarly tradition, Mongol administrators generally sought to draw on whatever knowledge proved most useful, regardless of its original cultural or geographic source. This pragmatic approach to knowledge exchange, combined with the empire's unusual degree of internal connectivity and relative political stability during the height of the Pax Mongolica, created conditions conducive to significant cross-cultural intellectual exchange. Scholars, physicians, astronomers, and craftsmen from vastly different traditions found themselves working within a shared administrative framework, often for the first time in recorded history. This legacy of practical, cross-cultural knowledge exchange remains one of the more significant, if sometimes understated, contributions of the Mongol imperial period to the broader history of science and technology. At its greatest extent, the Mongol Empire covered approximately 9 million square miles of contiguous territory, making it, by most historical measures, the largest connected land empire ever established. This figure represents roughly 16% of the Earth's total land area, an extraordinary proportion for a single unified political and administrative structure. The empire's territory spanned across what is now more than 30 modern-day countries, stretching from the Pacific coastline of East Asia to the edges of Central Europe. This scale of territorial control remains a frequently cited benchmark in comparative historical studies of empire and territorial administration. Despite covering such an enormous area, the empire maintained a surprising degree of administrative coordination for a considerable period of its history. The Mongol population at the time of the empire's founding is estimated to have been relatively modest, likely numbering somewhere between 1 and 2 million people across the unified steppe tribes. This comparatively small population governed, at the empire's height, territories containing a combined population of well over 100 million people across incorporated regions in China, Persia, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe. This significant disparity between the size of the governing population and the population under administration required considerable administrative efficiency, relying heavily on incorporated local officials and existing bureaucratic structures within conquered territories. The relatively small size of the core Mongol population also meant that military and administrative personnel were often stretched across enormous distances, further emphasizing the importance of efficient communication and logistics systems such as the Yam Relay network. The Yam Relay communication system, at its most developed, is estimated to have included many thousands of individual relay stations spread across the empire's vast territory, spaced at intervals of roughly 20 to 25 miles along major routes. Under favorable conditions, messages carried through this system could reportedly travel as much as 150 to 200 miles within a single day, a remarkable speed for long-distance communication during this historical period. This network required considerable resources to maintain, including a steady supply of fresh horses, food, and personnel stationed at each relay point along the route. The overall scale of this communication network reflects the significant administrative investment the empire placed in maintaining rapid, reliable communication across its enormous territory. Few comparable communication systems of similar scale and efficiency existed anywhere else in the world during this same historical period. Mongol cavalry forces, while varying considerably depending on the specific campaign and time period, are generally estimated by historians to have numbered in the range of 100,000 to slightly over 200,000 mounted soldiers at various points during the empire's major campaigns. This figure, while smaller than the total military forces sometimes fielded by more densely populated settled civilizations, benefited considerably from the exceptional mobility, coordination, and logistical efficiency characteristic of Mongol military organization. Each soldier typically maintained several horses in rotation, meaning the total number of horses accompanying a given campaign often significantly exceeded the number of individual soldiers. This ratio of horses to soldiers reflects the deep integration of horsemanship within Mongol military logistics and tactics. The relatively modest overall size of Mongol military forces, combined with their exceptional organizational efficiency, remains a frequently studied example within broader military historical analysis. The construction of Karakorum, established as an early imperial capital under Genghis Khan beginning around 1235, involved considerable resources and labor drawn from across the empire's territory, reflecting the broader administrative investment placed in establishing a formal seat of imperial governance. Archaeological evidence suggests the city, while relatively modest in overall size compared to some of the great cities of China or Persia, incorporated a notably diverse population, including craftsmen, merchants, and religious figures representing multiple different traditions and regions. The city's layout included distinct quarters for different religious and craft communities, reflecting the broader cultural diversity characteristic of the empire more generally. Though the city's population likely numbered only in the tens of thousands at its height, its cultural and administrative significance during this period considerably exceeded its physical size. Karakorum's later decline, following Kublai Khan's relocation of the primary capital to Khanbalik, reflects the broader administrative shift that occurred during the mid to late 13th century. Trade volume along Mongol-controlled Silk Road routes increased considerably during the height of the Pax Mongolica, supported by the empire's broad territorial connectivity and relatively stable administration of trade routes previously subject to considerably more political fragmentation and risk. While precise trade volume figures from this historical period remain difficult to establish with certainty, historical records, including customs documentation and merchant accounts, suggest a substantial increase in the frequency and scale of long-distance caravan trade during the 13th and early 14th centuries. Caravans of considerable size, sometimes including hundreds of camels or horses, traveled established routes connecting China, Central Asia, Persia, and the broader Mediterranean world. This increased trade activity contributed significantly to economic development across many regions incorporated into the empire, supporting continued urban growth and craft specialization. The relative decline of this trade activity following the gradual fragmentation of the unified empire in the 14th century reflects the significant role centralized administration played in supporting this earlier period of expanded commerce. The Mongol Empire's administrative structure incorporated a notably systematic approach to census-taking, with population counts conducted across various regions to support taxation, military conscription, and broader resource allocation planning. These census efforts, while varying in thoroughness across different regions and time periods, sometimes extended to remarkably detailed levels, recording information at the individual household level in certain administrative centers. This systematic approach to population data collection reflects a level of administrative sophistication notable for the historical period, particularly given the enormous geographic scale and cultural diversity of the territory being administered. Census data collected through this system supported the broader decimal military and administrative structure established under Genghis Khan, allowing for relatively precise calculation of available manpower and resources across different regions of the empire. This emphasis on systematic data collection represents one of the more administratively sophisticated aspects of Mongol imperial governance. The empire's territorial reach connected regions separated by extraordinary distances, with the journey between the empire's easternmost and westernmost territories spanning several thousand miles across widely varying terrain and climate. A message or official traveling the full breadth of the empire, even utilizing the relatively efficient Yam relay system, might require several months to complete such a journey under typical conditions. This vast distance required considerable administrative delegation, with regional khanates and local officials granted meaningful authority to manage day-to-day governance without requiring constant direct communication with the empire's central administrative structure. The practical challenges posed by this enormous geographic scale ultimately contributed to the gradual, largely administrative division of the empire into more independently governed khanates over the course of the 13th and early 14th centuries. This scale of territorial administration remains a frequently studied example within broader historical analysis of large-scale governance systems. Paper currency circulation under Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty administration reached a notably significant scale, with government reserves and regulatory oversight supporting relatively widespread use of standardized paper notes across much of incorporated Chinese territory. Historical records, including detailed accounts from travelers such as Marco Polo, describe a system in which paper currency could be used for transactions ranging from everyday purchases to large-scale trade agreements, reducing the practical burden associated with transporting heavy metal coinage. This relatively early and large-scale implementation of paper currency represents a notable administrative and economic innovation, predating widespread paper currency use in many other regions of the world by a considerable margin. The system required careful ongoing management to maintain public confidence and prevent counterfeiting, reflecting the broader administrative sophistication characteristic of Yuan dynasty governance. This early experiment in standardized paper currency remains a frequently cited example within broader historical studies of monetary and economic development. The Mongol Empire's overall duration as a unified political structure, from its formal establishment in 1206 through its gradual division into separate khanates during the early 14th century, spanned roughly a century of largely centralized administration. This relatively concentrated period of unified rule, while shorter than some other historically significant empires, achieved an extraordinary degree of territorial expansion and administrative development within a comparatively brief time frame. Even following this gradual division into separate khanates, elements of the shared administrative, legal, and cultural heritage established during this earlier unified period continued to influence regional governance for generations. This combination of rapid initial expansion, sophisticated administrative development, and lasting cultural and institutional legacy contributes to the Mongol Empire's continued significance within broader historical study of large-scale political and territorial organization. Genetic research conducted in the early 21st century identified a notably widespread Y chromosome lineage across parts of Central Asia, suggesting descent from a common male ancestor living approximately within the historical period associated with Genghis Khan's life. While the precise identification of this ancestor remains a subject of ongoing scholarly discussion, The geographic distribution and estimated timing of this genetic pattern align closely with the historical expansion of the Mongol Empire and its ruling family across Eurasia. This research offers a distinctive, biologically grounded perspective on the empire's lasting demographic influence across the regions it once governed. Such genetic studies represent a relatively recent addition to the broader historical understanding of the Mongol Empire's long-term legacy. This intersection of genetic and historical research continues to offer new insight into the empire's lasting demographic footprint. Modern Mongolia continues to honor Genghis Khan as a central figure of national identity and history, reflected in various cultural, educational, and civic contexts across the country. The Genghis Khan International Airport in Ulaanbaatar, alongside numerous statues, museums, and historical sites, reflects this continued cultural significance within contemporary Mongolian society. Traditional practices closely associated with the empire's historical period, including horsemanship, archery, and wrestling, remain central to Mongolian cultural celebrations, particularly the annual Nadam festival held each summer. This continued cultural connection reflects the enduring significance of this historical period within Mongolia's broader national identity and cultural heritage. Educational curricula within Mongolia typically include considerable focus on this period of history, reflecting its foundational role within the country's broader historical narrative. The administrative and legal innovations developed during the Mongol imperial period, including systematic census-taking, standardized legal codes, and structured postal relay systems, influenced governance practices across various regions long after the empire's gradual division into separate khanates. Elements of these administrative practices continued to shape regional governance within successor states across China, Persia, Central Asia, and parts of Eastern Europe for generations following the height of unified Mongol rule. Historians studying the broader development of large-scale administrative systems frequently reference Mongol imperial governance as a significant historical case study, particularly regarding the practical challenges and solutions associated with administering territory across enormous geographic distances. This lasting administrative influence represents one of the more understated but historically significant legacies of the Mongol imperial period. The careful, pragmatic approach to governance developed during this period continues to hold relevance within broader historical and administrative scholarship. The Pax Mongolica's role in facilitating expanded trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia contributed to lasting shifts in global trade patterns, connecting East Asian, Central Asian, Persian, and European markets with a degree of stability and openness that would not be fully replicated again for several centuries. This period of expanded connectivity is frequently cited by historians as an important precursor to later developments in global trade and cultural exchange, including the eventual European Age of Exploration, which was itself partly motivated by a desire to access the same Eastern markets that had become increasingly familiar through earlier Mongol-era trade connections. The lasting influence of this period extends into the broader historical understanding of how large-scale political stability can shape long-term patterns of trade and cultural exchange. This legacy continues to inform contemporary historical study of trade networks and cross-cultural exchange across Eurasia. Marco Polo's written account of his travels through the Mongol Empire, though the subject of considerable historical debate regarding certain specific details, remains one of the most significant surviving European sources documenting life and administration within the empire during the height of Kublai Khan's rule. This account introduced many European readers to detailed descriptions of Chinese and broader Asian society, geography, and administrative practice for the first time, contributing significantly to European understanding of the wider world during the following centuries. The text's descriptions of paper currency, extensive trade networks, and sophisticated urban planning offered European audiences a notably detailed window into the administrative achievements of the Mongol imperial period. This account continues to serve as a valuable, if carefully scrutinized, historical resource for scholars studying this period of cross-cultural contact and exchange. Its lasting influence on European perceptions of Asia extended well beyond the immediate period following its initial circulation. Architectural and artistic influences developed during the height of Mongol imperial patronage, including the blending of Chinese, Persian, and Central Asian design traditions, continued to shape regional artistic development well beyond the period of direct Mongol administration. Textile techniques, including certain gold thread weaving methods refined under Mongol imperial workshops, continued to influence craft traditions across Central Asia and the Middle East for generations. Similarly, architectural techniques and decorative styles developed or refined during this period continued to inform regional building traditions within successor states across Persia, Central Asia, and China. This lasting artistic and architectural influence reflects the broader pattern of cross-cultural exchange characteristic of the Mongol imperial period, extending its cultural legacy well beyond the political boundaries of the empire itself. Contemporary scholars studying regional art and architectural history frequently trace stylistic influences back to this significant period of cross-cultural exchange. The secret history of the Mongols, believed to have been composed shortly after Genghis Khan's death, remains one of the most historically significant surviving texts documenting the empire's early formation and administrative development. Written originally in the Mongolian script adapted from Yugur tradition, the text offers a uniquely internal perspective on early Mongol history, drawing heavily on earlier oral storytelling traditions. Modern historians continue to study this text extensively, using it alongside external sources from Chinese, Persian, and European accounts to construct a more complete understanding of the empire's early history. The text's blending of historical narrative with elements of traditional oral poetry offers valuable insight into the broader cultural context from which the empire emerged. This document remains a foundational source for contemporary historical scholarship regarding the early Mongol Empire. Contemporary historical scholarship regarding the Mongol Empire has evolved considerably over recent decades, increasingly emphasizing the empire's administrative sophistication, cultural diversity, and role in facilitating broad cross-cultural exchange, alongside its well-documented military history. This shift in scholarly emphasis reflects broader developments in the field of world history, which increasingly examines large-scale political structures through the lens of connectivity, exchange, and administrative innovation rather than focusing primarily on military conquest alone. Archaeological research, including ongoing excavation at sites such as Karakoram, continues to provide new insight into daily life, craft production, and urban planning during the height of Mongol imperial rule. This evolving scholarly perspective offers an increasingly nuanced understanding of the empire's broader historical significance. Continued research across multiple academic disciplines, including history, archaeology, and genetics, continues to refine and expand contemporary understanding of this significant historical period. The broader geographic and cultural connections established during the height of the Mongol Empire continue to inform contemporary understanding of Eurasian history, illustrating how large-scale political unification can facilitate lasting patterns of trade, cultural exchange, and administrative development across vast and diverse territories. Modern infrastructure projects connecting Central Asia, China, and Europe are occasionally compared, in broad conceptual terms, to the earlier connectivity established during the Pax Mongolica, reflecting the continued historical resonance of this earlier period of Eurasian integration. This historical parallel, while not a direct continuation, offers a useful lens through which to consider the broader historical patterns of connectivity and exchange across this vast geographic region. Scholars studying contemporary Eurasian trade and infrastructure development frequently reference this earlier historical period as a meaningful point of comparison. This continued relevance reflects the lasting historical significance of the connectivity achieved during the height of Mongol imperial administration. As our journey through this vast grassland empire draws quietly to a close, it is worth resting for a moment on the sheer scale of what was built from little more than open grass, patient horses, and a carefully organized system of law and loyalty. An empire spanning 9 million square miles, connected by relay riders capable of covering nearly 200 miles in a single day, administered through a blend of law, census, and religious tolerance remarkable for its historical period, eventually settled back into the quiet rhythms of the land from which it first emerged. The grass along the Onon River still turns pale gold in late summer, much as it did in the earliest years of this story, indifferent to the empires that have risen and settled across the wider steppe beyond its banks. What remains, long after the borders have shifted and the khanates have faded into the pages of history, is a quiet, lasting pattern of connection, one that gently linked distant corners of the world together for the better part of a century. And it is here, on that same wide, softly lit horizon, that we allow this story to settle gently into rest. That is where we leave the story tonight, drifting somewhere over the wide grasslands of the Mongolian steppe, long after the last rider has disappeared beyond the horizon. If this journey helped carry you towards sleep, consider leaving the video playing softly in the background, and we will meet again in the next quiet corner of history. Thank you for resting here with Sleeping with Facts, and sleep well.